to The Truth in His Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Thank you for tuning in and checking out this podcast that's focused on conversations about arts and culture. Today, I have the privilege of having a conversation with an artist and educator working in Baltimore, Maryland. She is committed to MICA, the Maryland Institute College of Art, and hopes to promote more accessibility and educational opportunities in education to students of color in Baltimore. Please welcome Natovian McLeod. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Rob. I'm excited.
Thank you for being on. And I want to dive in with, I gave the amalgamated copy and paste different sources intro. Could you give us those vital stats? Like if you were doing an elevator pitch of who you are, could you give us that in terms of your background and really what motivates your work?
I can. Yeah. Wow. Who I am. That's such a loaded question. When you ask an artist, and I'm sure, being an artist yourself, but who I am, I describe myself as an educator and arts advocate. I also describe myself as a sculptor. I love working with wood, and I create pieces that cause the viewer to just stop and think and reflect on who they are, but then also stop and think and listen to someone else. Because I feel like a lot of what's going on in the world right now and a lot of the issues we have are because people aren't listening to others and not taking the time to stop and think. So I'm just super inspired by people and people coming together to promote change and listening to each other's stories. I have been an arts educator for a while. I graduated from MICA in 2015 with my BFA in General Fine Arts, and then I stayed a fifth year to get my Master of Art in Teaching. And I went straight into teaching kindergarten to fifth grade. And I was at the same school for 6 years. So my kindergartners were in fifth grade by the time because now I've transitioned to a new job. So I'm not at that school anymore, unfortunately. But I got to see them grow up, and they are my family, and I think about them all the time. And so I think that describes who I am. There's so much more. There's so much, but you'll probably hear more as we start talking.
Oh yeah, we'll peel the onion back a bit more.
Oh no,
just to get some more of those details.
I'm sweating. God.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. So let's talk about education. Could you share some of the programming, some of the things in terms of education that you've worked on in promoting accessibility and educational opportunities for students of color?
Sure. So I'm currently the director of youth programs and community education at MICA. But even though that is a recent title, this is something I feel like I've been doing since high school, just getting students excited about art. Sharing my personal story. And the past 5 years, I've actually been program coordinator for MICA's Art and Design College Accelerator program. Yeah. And that program is like my baby. And all of the students I just adore, even the ones that I am not in communication with anymore. But that program is for Baltimore City students. You have to have a Baltimore City zip code in order to apply and be accepted into this program. And it is completely free for students. They enter their 10th grade year. They're there for 11th grade, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. They are taking free courses at MICA, art and design in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they're taking a workshop course. So we talk about time management skills, communication skills, writing your resume, applying to colleges. Yeah. Writing your artist statement, asking them, what is your art about? What do you want to do? Helping them craft and put all that together. They receive free meals in the lunch hour. So students are there. They are committed to this program because it is 3 years long, fall and spring semester, Saturdays from 9 to 3:30. They are in there just learning and working and, just pouring their heart and soul into what they hope to see for their future. And in terms of promoting educational opportunities, that's what this is for me. And that's why I started falling in love with open studies, because if we want to see our students, and particularly our students of Baltimore, advance and go far, we have to provide them with so much more than they're being given right now, which is in my opinion, is very little. Like we have to really pave that pathway. And it does start with, putting up the money to do that so that it's free for them. And from what I've seen, like students walk in there and they into the program, but they leave with so much more confidence, and they leave with such a higher level of thinking on what they're capable of because they've been given something and they've worked towards it, and they just see, they see the possibilities. And it's a great metaphor for what I feel like art can do.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's one of the programming that MICA is doing. That's been going on for a while. Of course, we have other programmings for students across Maryland. We have young people studios. We have community education programs for students and adults, for non-degree and degree-seeking individuals. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, access is important. It's one of those things where I think you hear impact, which is a word I have feelings about. I think it's used wrong, and I feel like my counter to it a lot of times, especially now, is vision. I start thinking of vision, start thinking of innovation. What are we doing in that regard? Where are the new ideas? And I feel like, open studies is an example of like new ideas that are out there. I remember one, it was one line I remember interviewing Trish Moore from the program as well, and Trish mentioned, anyone from 5 to 105, and I was like, wow, that's a lot, and it just leads to an exchange like outside of even the curriculum. It's there are just different experiences generationally that will be baked into conversations within the classroom and experiences within the classroom, and that feels innovative to me. That feels like that there is some vision, especially with the way that it's presented and the way that it's delivered. And I think more resources should be allocated in that way to cumulatively make us stronger, make us smarter here, and just give us like just new opportunities. And I feel that I don't see a lot of it. And that's what really resonated with me, and even trying to do this series, right? And so what generally for you to be involved with something, because you said you've been involved with this type of work for a while at this point, what resonates with you specifically about it? It's just like, this is opportunities. It's like, I got to be around the kids. I got to be around. So tell me about that.
Well, I can start easy, like just seeing their smiles, like seeing joy in students and youth in particular. It's a feeling I can't describe. And I remember when I was in the classroom and people would ask me, like, why do you do this? Like, why are you with students, like yelling and screaming and running around all day and still like walking really happy? And I said, the only way I can describe the feeling is like when you're rubbing your hands together and your hands get warm. And it's like when I am in front of kids and when I'm giving them art, like that is literally what my heart feels like. Like I feel the warmth, and I see the change that can happen when students are excited about something. And it's what I love about the AdCap program, and it's what I love about Open Studies. And what I love most is about, it's not just a mission statement. It's like, okay, like what are we doing to actually get this done and make it happen? And so far, every student in AdCap who has applied to MICA and been accepted has gotten a full ride to the institution for the 4 years. And it's like just seeing the kids just hold on to that and just work every day just means the world to me, even if I don't talk to some of them anymore, and I'll just be bugging them like, hey, how are you? And it's like, I know they're busy, but there are quite a few that I still chat with. But I think just seeing the possibilities, like that's what keeps me going. Does that answer your question?
No, it does. And it ties to the vision thing where, Baltimore is not huge. So being able to make those connections will have you, and then being able to observe someone as they matriculate and they grow. It's like, oh, that's what you're doing now?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And just seeing it like full scope, from kindergarten to 12th grade, like it's possible. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but even for adults, it's like there's so many things that we are capable of. And when given the right opportunity, it's like we can just go so far as a community.
Yeah, you need that accelerant. You need that click, whatever it might be. And I can say that in doing this podcast. And, as we were talking before getting started, I did about 10 years of this podcast, but being a podcaster rather, before even having that degree of breakthrough, like not knowing if anyone is listening, not knowing if this being in this space was worth time and effort and what goes into it, but kind of still, but loving it. And, I think once someone gives you some inclination of maybe this is a way to kind of do this and maybe reach a new audience, or maybe this is a way to do this and maybe this is really your calling. Yes. That is something that's big. And being around people and kind of these innovative sort of programs and people who have vision, that's huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you could summarize what you do, like overall, because we haven't even got to the art questions yet, right? Summarize what you do as an educator in terms of doing one thing well. What would it be?
Something I feel like I do really well is connecting with students and families and just having a conversation, getting to know people, but just listening to them. I feel like I'm a great listener, and I feel like I feel like I'm able to care enough in a way where I'm listening, but then I'm constantly thinking about from here and then years on, what can I do to make sure that this person's story or the student's story is heard, or just to continue the action of uplifting them. Yeah. And really just connecting. Like I was just talking to a parent earlier today. I texted, I was like, hey, how's Tony doing? And she called me. She was like, "Oh no, did the classes not end? I told Tony it was over." I was like, "No, you're good. It's over. I was thinking about you. It's okay. Like, how are you doing?" And then we just end up talking, for an hour, just checking in. And that's just something I realized as an educator that not everyone can do that. And I always thought, teachers, they have to connect with families. Like, what else are you going to do? You have to talk to them, but it's not, it's not a given for everyone. And I'm glad you asked me this, because I think as people, and something that I realize I have fallen short on as I get older, is taking a moment to recognize my strengths. Mm-hmm. So when you asked that question, I was like, wow. I was like, what a great question, because that's what people need to do. And that's what I do with my kids. And I don't do that enough with adults, to call on their strengths so that they can speak it out loud into existence. So anyway, that's my spiel. Like, thank you for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a 100% important thing where we don't spend enough time on that. And, when someone's like, "Oh, that was a really unique question," it's like, yeah, it was a unique question. I did ask that. I try to gas myself up just a little bit. I want to go full gas. Then my head's just too big for the screen and nobody wants that. Yeah. But I think it is important to know what you do well and to leverage what those strengths are. And it's about identifying opportunities as well, where, it might be something that you're like, all right, I can improve in this area, because that's important. And that's a good
question too. Like, where can I improve? Oh gosh.
Well, that would actually is the next question.
Is it? Oh goodness.
That was my segue attempt, but I'll frame it this way. So we're in this process, I think, where we're ever improving, we're ever tweaking, or what have you. And I know with this, and doing this podcast, like I listen to some of the very early episodes. I didn't have rapid fire questions in there. And one of the things I wanted to do, I identified like, all right, I want to be able to kind of connect with this person on more of a personal level, not purely you're your work, so dance monkey, but really tell me about who you are as well, and how is that baked in. And I think the best way for me to do that is tweaking and adding those sorts of questions. So for what you do, whether it's in the educational side or whether it's in the artistic side, and we have some art questions rather. Okay. Where do you feel that is an opportunity where you've grown, from like over the last year or so?
Yeah. So where have I grown? I mean, it's going to be hard for me to call on. Yeah, something I feel like I've grown because I'm so self-reflective. And if I show you my artwork and if I talk more about it, it's all about self-reflection because it's ever present in my mind. But I am growing and saying things simple and just straightforward. That is an area of growth that I am developing in. I do it really well with students. Actually was Maryland's elementary educator of the year for 2022.
Shout out to you.
Oh, thank you. And something that I was told I do really well is taking complicated topics for students, saying it and putting it into very simple, easy to understand ways.
Yeah.
And for some reason, when it comes to talking with adults, it's the opposite. I'm just like, okay, let's ramble as much as I can to
like,
make sure you understand me.
Like, I can draw it for you, but I can't.
It's like, can I draw it and then also explain it and then over-explain it? And then can I reference this drawing one more time? Yeah. And I'm trying. So I don't know if you drink yogi tea. I'm a big tea drinker. And years ago, I'm surprised it's still in my windshield of my car. But years ago, my first week of teaching, so 6 years ago, on the tea, it said, say it straight, simple, and with a smile. Yeah. And I have that in my car and I read it every morning. And so I grasped it with the students and now I'm trying to grasp it as I'm a director now in this new life transition.
Yeah, it's one of the things where in doing this, like this was a risk and it's a big growth thing where, as I was saying earlier, and I started off in doing the pod and it was only my own thing. It was kind of with my own group of friends and kind of isolated and not really out there. And I was like, no, I'm really interested in like doing something that I feel that serves the community. Right.
Yeah.
And there is a risk when you're bringing in other people. You don't know how they go about things. And I've had some people who don't realize that they've agreed to do a podcast and are on a podcast and are doing a podcast. And you have other people who are very well set up and prepared and all of that. Uh-huh. And it's like sometimes it could throw me off. So I'm like, all right, like I think I was saying to you earlier, I was just like, oh no, we're going to be great. And because it's like, you're alive. So that's one. Some people just get on and it's like, oh, you're dead. Oh, that's what's going on. Oh, and so I think with it, it's like being able to identify where you think a conversation can go and really what that length might look like, because that's, I get a temperature on how a conversation is going to go within the first few minutes. Oh. And one of my goals is to try to talk with the guests beforehand. If they come off as like, I'm a little nervous, I've never done this before, and get them like kind of comfortable. Like whatever whatever that like stretch, low calisthenics, breathe in, breathe out, but verbally, and then to get into the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that was really helpful. And I told you this earlier, like I can relate that to art in so many ways, just with, meditation, reflection, sharing your opinions, but then taking time to listen to the opinions of others. Yeah. If I show you my artwork, you're going to be like, what in the world is like, because it's just, I'm a minimalist. So my artwork it's like barely there, but it's there. And that's what I hope people to say. It's like, what is that? Like, let's just stop and just stop, just relax and think about what you can learn from other people.
Well, let's actually transition into these art questions because, I took a little bit of a deep dive through your website earlier. And,
oh, no. My website I haven't touched in 3 years.
Well, so on there, I see, your background included, and this is again 3 years ago, some sculpture work in there, collage work, painting, photography. So creatively, I think we have several interests. Like I wanted to be a comic book writer and artist when I was a kid, and I did poetry for a bit and, did some screenwriting and things of that nature. But I think my first love or the through line between those is some version of storytelling. So creatively, what would you say your first love is as an artist?
Oh, my first love as an artist. Like for when I'm making artwork.
Yes.
my first love as an artist is being able to take everything that's going on in my head, because I have a lot going on in my head and it's always running 1,000 miles a minute, and being able to just like feel it shrinking down, feel my heart rate. I don't know if decrease is the right word, but just like slow down and take everything that's going on, everything I want to say, and put it into something simple that can just be viewed by someone else. Because growing up, like I was a military child and I actually was at a different school about every year until high school. So I was always all over the place in my head, like thinking about this, worried about this, like, am I going to make new friends? Am I going to understand? Am I going to be able to learn, because I'm nervous about all these things? Like I was always thinking about stuff. And when I found art, I just said, oh my gosh, what a great outlet. What a great, I'll say resource, but I didn't know that word resource, but what a great outlet for me to just put things down and hang it up or throw it away and just make sure that I don't, I just don't get too stressed out. And so when you see my sculptures, like they're very, very minimal. They are about people and places. More recently, they're about just the time it takes to get something accomplished, and using that as a metaphor for we are people that are constantly learning every day, and we have a vision of ourselves that we would like to be, but it takes time to get there. And then once you're there, you realize it's never ending and you have like another vision for yourself, and it just constantly, keeps building on each other. So I use a lot of layers of paint. I use a lot of wood. I have some more recent sculptures that, I actually don't have any more because they sold recently, but they're very different than what I have now, like on my website. It's like I'm trying to tell people I am a work in progress, and I believe you are too, and that's okay. And we can grow together and learn from each other.
Yeah. That's I think that's powerful. And I think, recognizing that we all are that, like no one is finished.
Yeah.
It's like when you talk to any entrepreneur, like I did this class not too long ago, and we were building our websites, and it's like, you're always going to be working on your website, right? It's like, oh, I'm done. No, you're not.
No.
Or when you talk to like people, like you talk to painters, I'm sure this maybe applies for you, where it's like you never finish painting. You just kind of stop painting.
Yes.
Like, I'm done with this right now. All right.
Yes.
I have paintings in my home when I was doing this phase where I had a goal of doing one painting per month, and I got through about 6 of them. And
that's great.
And they were paintings for people. They had like an emotional component and a connection to people. And it was one of those things where I hadn't painted anything in probably 15 years. So I was kind of like going back and revisiting something. One of the Austin Kleon things in his book, Still Like an Artist, he was talking about you don't cut off parts of your creativity. You always revisit it, because it's almost like you have phantom limb syndrome, where I don't do that anymore. You're going to come back to it.
Yeah.
So that's what I was experiencing. And I look at a painting now, looking at one right now, it's like, I could touch that up.
Yeah,
I'm not done with it.
And that's the beautiful thing and the most difficult thing about being an artist too. It's just like, oh gosh, I just want to be able to finish something, but yeah, nothing is ever finished. And I just use that metaphor, with life and with artwork. One of the more recent pieces I made was a sculpture called Life. And I was beating myself up the past 6 years because I went from making all of these sculptures, probably like 3 a month, to then becoming a full-time teacher and maybe doing 1 a year, like if possible, because I was always giving to students, because I had 2 part-time jobs and I also had a full-time job of teaching at the time. And I just collected I had all of these cut pieces of wood. 'Cause I have power tools and I had all these pieces of wood, and I said, well, let me just put these all together. So I created the sculpture in 2020, but it was a collection of wood that I had since 2013. And
wow.
I put them all together, and it was just like beautiful for me to see at the end.
Yeah.
And I remember someone had said, "Oh, I'd love to purchase this from you." And I cried. I was like, yeah, I want to keep this sculpture for myself. And then that was another lesson. Like, okay, like you've made something, you've learned from something, time to pass it on to someone else.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they can pass it on to someone else. So
that's one of the things I wish we can get back to. And I'm sure that, some people kind of don't like the idea or what have you, because everything's become kind of commercialized and money focused and all. But I like this idea where I remember watching, what is it? These like appraiser shows. It's like, yeah, I got this painting from 1971 from said famous artist. It's like, yeah, they just gave it to me. They need to make rent and they just didn't have the space. And I was like, I want to be in that situation. I know artists. I just want to have random things. I was like, get rid of my stuff. Just throw my stuff out of here. I want to have good work, not my mid work. Well, I like my work, but still, I want to have this whole wall in the studio just filled with stuff. And I wish that's something that we can get back to. And ultimately, I guess how I'm connecting that is, I want art to be kind of just passed along, what have you. I want that to be something. And like there are a few pieces in here that I'm not going to probably keep if I were to move or leave, what have you. I already know who I'm giving it to.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's great.
So I got 2 more real questions. Okay. And then I got some rapid fire questions.
No. Okay.
So here's the next real question.
I'm just getting my charger, but go ahead.
Okay. What is the most fun or exciting point in your artistic process? It could be any, because you work in multiple mediums. So what is the most fun or exciting point within the process for you?
Most exciting in the process of like me teaching, or
creating as an artist.
Oh, just creating. Oh, I'm sorry. I think cutting the wood.
You said power tools earlier. I was like, all right.
Yeah. I got a new table saw. I bought a new table saw for myself a few months ago. And it's just something about having something so powerful in your hands. And then I think the risk of the risk that comes along with it. But then at the end, when I can just sand and smooth the wood, and I have just beautiful, smooth surface that came from something really rough and rigid, or a sound that's really rough and rigid, and just knowing that, oh my gosh, something can just be made out of a terrifying sound and possibility of cutting your fingers off.
I have a table saw here that I have not opened it. I was like, I'm going to keep this where it's at. I'm not going to touch it because I have a few pieces of wood in the basement. Because at one point my dad was just, he hoards at times, and then my place became his secondary hoarding place. Oh. He's like, yeah, I got these wood chairs. You might want to stain them. I was like, what? I was like, why do you leave chairs? You're not keeping a key to my place. It's just random things in there. It's like, oh, this is just a tool shed now. That's what my house is.
Oh, well, that sounds like heaven for me. I'll have to show you how to use table saw, unless you already know how. But
I would love to learn.
Yes.
I would say this, I told people when they asked me what do you really like the most about doing podcasts and all of that? I was like, look, man, I like trying out new equipment. Those cables just came in. Oh man, it's going to be a great night tonight.
Yes. And that's sort of how I am about. And then when I learned about different types of wood and, what they could do, and then, of course, the price of lumber went up. So I was like, well, let me use what I have, because I do have a lot of wood that I could just work with.
I was thinking I was in Austin recently, and so I started following Austin Kleon, and I saw that he was having while I was down there, he was having a shed built in his backyard, a studio, like a recording studio shed in his backyard. And I was like, that's made out of wood. I know where to get wood. Let me buy some wood, knowing nothing about it other than I see something that someone that I respect is doing. Now I need to do it.
Yes. Oh, but that's good. You see, I think that's what art is, learning, growing.
Yeah. So this is the last question, and this all ties it up together. I'm very proud of this question because of the subject matter of what we've been talking about. So I read that creativity in children is great because it hasn't been affected by critique, comparison, or ego. Children create to create. And as adults, we get further away from that and we try to connect to it. We try to connect to this just idea of let's just create something. Do you agree with that? And if so, how do you tap back into that childlike creativity?
Wow, that is a really good question. I do agree with parts of that because
Sure.
I remember when I was making the decision to be an educator, I said, okay, do I go little kids? Do I go big kids? Do I try and see like what it's like working with adults? And I chose the little ones, kindergarten through fifth grade, because I felt like they are confident. They are not worried about what someone's thinking about their artwork, and they're just going to have fun. It's just going to be a big party of us making work together. And it was that. But then I learned the more I got into it, that students and kids are a reflection of the environment.
Mm.
And they are concerned about what other people are thinking about their work. And sometimes they are a little nervous and not willing to share, everything about themselves just because they can with artwork because it's the language everyone can understand. And I think I learned from that. And what I took from it was, okay, as an educator, I need to help students learn and understand art making skills and concepts, but also help them grow emotionally and bring in that social emotional learning piece.
Sure.
To help build their confidence, to help them understand what's going on in the world, to help them reflect on what's going on in the world and put that on paper or in something or, with their voice or with their body, because we do some dancing in my classroom. And I'm sort of going on a tangent now because I was so inspired by the question. But I see so many layers of opportunity for students, as I said before. But I think what I see now is that even with those opportunities and the excitement of art, there also is a lot of trauma that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And bringing those two pieces together can be very difficult. And it's not always, easy for kids to do. And you're going to have to ask me the second part of the question again, because
No. So for you, since you said you agree with a part of it, and I think you really explained that well, and I think it's a very interesting point of view from your vantage point. Obviously, being an educator and being an artist. So from the artist side of it, how do you tap back into that childlike creativity where you're like, I'm just going to create. I just want to do something. Where's that table saw? Let's make it happen. Or so tell me about that.
Yeah, I start small and I start with a word called grace that I like to reflect on constantly that my mom has taught me. Just you hold yourself with as much grace as possible. And you also give yourself grace. And that's what I've been doing, in difficult times. And that's what I do with my students. And I encourage them, give yourself grace, like forgive yourself. If you make a mistake, it's okay. But guess what? You can't make mistakes in art, so you're fine. And if there's ever a time if I'm struggling with my artwork or, I haven't made something for a long time and I'm like, am I even an artist? I haven't made something. I haven't finished. I haven't sold something. It's like, okay, give yourself some grace. Start simple. Maybe do a little painting here and there. Yeah. And I love making cards for people. And I actually love just painting little cards because I'm a big note giver and I like giving notes, like love notes to people and friends and my students. Yeah. And I actually started terrible, for years because I had the same kids. And I had started doing that with my kids. And then I just started receiving all these notes. It's just I have so many. I have them hanging up everywhere. I have a huge pile of them. And it's just grace, I feel like, is the gift that keeps on giving. So I'll do a little painting here or there, make a little card here or there. And I also like to write, so I'll do that sometimes too. And I recently started a gratitude journal that my mom gave me a little notebook, and I'm trying to show gratitude for something every day, for several things every day. But yeah.
Yeah. Two things that I think attached to that before I get to these rapid fire questions.
This was not the rapid fire
No,
question.
no,
Oh
not at
my
all,
gosh.
not at all. So one of the things that happens because you're doing this, you're putting the work in, and you, at least from my vantage point, I will over critique what I'm doing, and or over critique just my own existence. And so the grace thing is very big. And one of the things that I keep is because being a podcaster, sometimes you want to see like, what does that feedback loop look like? I don't need it from that perspective, but also you want to know that it's being received. And you only get the negative messages. You rarely get the good ones. And so I have like cards because, one of the things you mentioned that resonated with me, I always get cards from people I have one in my window I'm looking at. It was a bunch of words in there from someone. I was like, all I know is this was nice. This was a nice sentiment. And I keep that there. It's kind of like this little recharge, like box. And secondly, this happened recently. This was yesterday. And going in that same vein of just recognizing and giving yourself grace. I started a podcast and I fumbled on something and I practiced it multiple times because it was a kind of a difficult last name and that the string together. I really don't like messing up people's names and or what they do. And I got the name right, but I messed up where they were from. And I called it something ridiculous. And I was like, oh, I missed that completely. And the person was like, oh, yeah, keep it moving. And I was like, oh, but I lamented on it for a few minutes. And then I made sure it was almost some stank on it. Every time I said it later, just a reminder to myself. And I later re-recorded the intro and put that in there in post. But it was one of those things. I was like, look, don't let this derail you in this conversation. You are a human. You're doing this thing. Just do it. And the rest of it is going to be great. And just knowing that it's going to be great. That's how I just tap back into why I love it.
Sorry, and I am not great at this. I'm still learning every day. Like just the other day I had an incident and I'm still thinking about it, sometimes it just eats me up inside, but I am glad we're having this conversation because now I can remember, okay, let's go make some art and let's put it on something and just release it and, let it go. And that's what I do with my kids too. Like if they're angry or something, because little kids get angry about stupid stuff. I mean, but it's not, that's exactly what I'm going to say. It's like, they're just like, and then I have to stop and I think before I react. And it's like, but it's not stupid to them. And that's where I feel like a lot of miscommunication happens with people. And again, a lot of the issues in the world, it's like we are so quick to judge someone else's opinion about something. I mean, it depends on the opinion, but we're so quick to say, oh, you don't need to be upset about that thing. That doesn't mean, but it's like, no, what would happen if we all just, said, okay, you're upset. Yeah. Tell me why you're upset. I might not understand why, but you have a right to be upset about this. Yeah. And that's what I did in my classroom. And I'm going to miss doing that with the little kids now because you can see, I think the light bulb go off in their head and they're like, I am upset. Yeah. I do have a right to be upset.
That was one of the things
he did cut me in line and I didn't like it. And I was like, you don't have to like it. I would be upset too.
I remember it was one of the things that my therapist said to me years ago when I was still attending those sessions. And I remember I was like, man, I don't know how I feel about things. And he's like, are you mad about it? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, that's how you feel.
Yes.
And I was like, but am I mad though? He's like, you're overthinking your own emotions right now. He's like, that's a different thing you're doing. I was like,
that sounds like me. Oh my gosh, we're the same person. But yes, and then what's funny is, as an educator, you probably noticed this as a podcast. Do you call it a podcaster?
Yeah, I'm a podcaster. Yeah,
a podcaster. You learn so much about yourself by seeing the reactions of other people or listening to other people's opinions about things. It's just like, oh, you said this earlier. It's like a big therapy session, or it can be. But it's just funny. Kids, they make me laugh, and that's why I said I need to stay around children. It keeps me young. It keeps me humble. They are just funny.
So now it's that time for some rapid fire questions. This is what we're wrap on. I got a group of them for you, and just answer them as quickly as possible. Don't overthink them, and they're fun questions. They're fun questions.
You just talk about how we were overthinking stuff.
Yeah, I was just like, you got to give that preface.
Oh my gosh.
And also, remember that you worked with children on this first question.
Okay. Oh, you're giving me a cheat sheet. Oh, that's sweet.
Name a four-letter word that starts with F.
Oh my gosh. I was about to say fun, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not an educator anymore. I was a four-letter. I can't think of one. Oh my goodness.
Fame?
Oh my gosh, I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. Can we say it at the same time?
Yeah, we're good.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count though.
I mean, there are several.
There are several, and this is why I told you I am not good under pressure. And now I'm looking at this red dot on the screen that's recording. Oh my goodness.
That question is provocative in nature, which is really funny to me.
I was going to say, and I do not curse, but the first word that came to my mind. But I don't think I've I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the F word.
The question used to be, what's the first letter of your favorite curse word?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then I said, well, I can't say that, like, we're on a podcast. Also, like, I don't curse. So let me think of something else. So going back to me being an overthinker, this is all the thoughts that happen in my brain in 3 seconds.
I mean, you could go with food, fire.
I could have went with food, and I love food. Oh man. Well, okay, give me another letter. This is my rapid fire question to you. Give me another letter, and I'm gonna try again.
Name a four-letter word that starts with J.
Oh my gosh, Jade.
Great. What's one subject that you would like to learn more about?
Oh, I love to learn more about history. I love history, but there's just so much more I need to learn. I need to learn about. I just want to be one of those history nerds that just knows everything and about the past, and I only know a little bit.
So like a historian?
Oh, maybe like a historian. I know when I was in college, I took a lot of existentialism classes, and I fell in love. I failed every test, but I did, and I flunked those classes, but I loved reading because it was all on tests, and I have severe test anxiety. And that was just a grade, but I love reading about history. I love teaching my students about history, and there's just so much more I want to research and have time to do it.
Oh yeah. Last two I got for you. Salty or sweet?
Sweet.
Okay, that tracks. Lastly, this one is great because you have a name that is a name. What was your childhood nickname?
I did not have a childhood nickname, which was very traumatizing for me at the time because my name is incredibly difficult. And back when I was in school, teachers would look at the first name and then read you by your last name. Like, all right, when they take attendance, like Mr. Smith, Mrs. Johnson. So they would say Mr. McLeod. And I'd be sitting there like, Miss, I'm a girl. Don't assume my pronouns. But because my name is so strong, and it's like it's very like powerful, and it has like a masculine energy to it. So I've been told. I did not have a childhood nickname. My mom recently, maybe a couple years recently, started calling me Tovi. Okay. And I did have one or two college friends that called me Tovi in college. I remember in high school, there was this girl who attempted to give me a nickname so that it's easier to understand. Like, we were both really new to school, and we were both shy, and she was really all about being popular, but I was the artist, and I was like, I don't need to talk to anybody. Like, leave me alone. I'm fine. But she was really outgoing, and she said, oh my gosh, your nickname can be Tia. And of course, the girl was white, and I just remember feeling so offended. And at the time, just being like really shy, not that Tia has to be a white name, but just like, you know, the simplification of a name, like a part of my identity that was so powerful to me and that had finally grown to love. And it's like, you're simplifying it down and like minimizing who I am. Like I had a lot going on as a high schooler.
I dig it.
But I just remember in high school, they really tried to make it stick. And I was so shy at the time. And it took so long for me to just say, no, this is not working. And I learned a lot from that moment, you know, to speak up a little bit more and just take ownership of my name. And I love my name now. I love it now. And I wish my students could call me my first name, but I made sure they all know my first name. Even though they couldn't because of the public school system and how it's set up. But I love it. That's a great question.
Well, thank you. So that's pretty much, and I don't have, my nickname was Cheap, by the way.
I was about to ask you, your nickname. You said Cheap?
It was very cheap. It was just Rob. My dad and I have the same nickname. It's just a shortened version. Yeah, Rob. I was like, that is an act. That's an action that criminals do. Can I actually get a nickname? It's like, nah, Rob works. It's like, or Junior. I was like, wow, no work was done. We don't have a lot of creatives in this family, I see.
Oh, that's so nice though. You know, names are important. There's an activity that art educators do, and it's not called the name game. What is it called? But the idea is that everyone has a name story. Mm-hmm. So, it's like a community building icebreaker, and you just go around and you share your name and like where it came from, or a memory about your name, or a thought about your name, and it helps build community. So
that's cool. Yeah. I like that. So that's pretty much all the questions that I had for today. And I want to thank you for being on this podcast. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check you out, your work. Pretty much the floor is yours. Anything that you want to share in these last moments, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. You can check me out, I guess, on Instagram. I have Natovian _M is my personal, and then Natovian _art. I am not on social media at all though. So I will try my best to make sure I respond to messages, but I also am connected to MICA in any way. So if you like Google Natovian and put MICA in there, my email will come up and information on how to contact me about youth programs, talk to me about AdCap, which I am so excited about, and the future of the programs. Yes, I think that's what I have. That was the rapid fire question because I was not prepared to tell people how to connect with me. As artists, you probably experience this too. I feel like we're so humble sometimes. And well, I guess it depends on the person, but most of the times I've encountered people that are so humble, and it's like, this is what I do and this is who I am, and that's it.
Yeah.
But thanks, Rob.
Thank you. So there you have it, folks. For Natovian McLeod, the great Natovian McLeod, I am Rob Lee, saying that there is art community in and around your city. You just got to look for it.